of this as we go forward. So my name is Jonathan Roberts, and I am a professor at QUT, one of the partner organisations of the centre. And we're going to go over, I'm going to give a quick 10-minute introduction. We're going to have to be relatively quick of the centre. We will then hand over to our program leaders. We have 5 programs. They're going to talk through their programs and about what sort of projects are on offer. And we'll then have time at the end for a question and answer session. So keep thinking of your questions as we go along. Okay, so to start with, of course, what is collaborative robotics or cobotics? You may be wondering what we think, what we think they are. So you will, this robot on the left here, you will see is what manufacturers call a collaborative robot. So they tend to be small-ish robots that are so-called safe in the proximity of the people using them. So you can see here an example of some work we did a few years ago where we had a metal worker working very closely with a universal robot, a UR10, which is known as a collaborative robot. So that's what companies that sell these robots call collaborative robots, but that's not necessarily our definition of collaborative robots. We also think of collaborative robots in a sense of it may be a large robot that would normally be not considered a collaborative robot in the kind of by the seller. And you can see here on the right, a very large industrial style robot. That could also be a collaborative robot, and we're interested in using those robots if a person is needed to work with that robot. So it may be that the person isn't in the direct workspace of those robots, but they're required to work with the robots. They may be adjacent, they may be remote, but they're required to work with the robot. It may be that we also develop the techniques and technology so they can work. Person can work safely in the workspace of those robots too in the future. It is definitely possible and definitely part of our research. So we're just a bit more inclusive in our definition of what a collaborative robot is. And then there's this term cobotics, which is, of course, is just collaborative robotics. It's just shorthand for that. So that is what we're talking about. Now, our particular centre has been funded for 5 years. It's an ARC centre, so it's an Australian Research Council centre. We have got a reasonable amount of money to spend over those 5 years. So we've got money from the Australian federal government and from our industry partners, and the universities, of course, also contribute to this. So we've got the funding. We have 19 chief investigators known as CIs, and they are researchers at our partner universities that make up the centre. So 6 of those are at UTS in Sydney, 9 are at QUT in Brisbane, and 4 are at Swinburne. And then we have 7 partner investigators and 5 postdoc positions and 16 PhD projects, which is what you hopefully are interested in. What's different about this centre to some other centres you may be familiar with or we've been involved with ourselves? We've got a more holistic approach to our research here, because we understand, and industry now understands, that you can buy robots, but you can't necessarily easily use them because there's a whole range of issues. It's not just about the engineering. Sometimes it is about the engineering, but there's a whole lot of other things, that will become clear when you see our research programs. We've also got diversity of industry experience as well as this multidisciplinary research. So we have the research partners. So I've already mentioned UTS, QUT and Swinburne. We've also got our international university partner, TU Dortmund in Germany. And then we have our industrial partners. So we have Weld Australia, InfraBuild, Cook Medical, B&R Enclosures, IR4, and this thing called the ARM Hub, which is the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Hub, which is a not-for-profit company which helps industry adopt research. So we have those partners, and we're always looking for new partners. So we will hopefully be adding to that list of partners in the next few months. So it's a relatively diverse set of companies who are all very keen to share things between themselves. So one of the attractions, we think, and they told us, for joining the centre was that, you know, they can learn from each other as well. So so we hope we've got this great sort of collaboration in actually how everybody works. This is kind of what we actually aim to do. So we, of course, want to build technical capability and capacity. That's really the name of this scheme, is about industrial transformation training. So it's very much about building capacity. We also want to foster innovation and help our industry partners on that sort of innovation area. And we're all about equipping the future workforce. It's already very clear in Australia that it's hard to get the right people with the right skills, and we're already entering a phase of our economy where, yeah, there's labour shortages in particular areas, and it's quite clear there's going to be skill shortages in the robotics and cobotics area going forward. So this is why this centre is kind of so critical. We like to say we're EPIC, which means we're excellent, people-centric, innovative, and collaborative. And people are at the center of collaborative robotics, almost by definition. So, you know, everything we're interested in when it comes to the use of robots is where robots are used with people. So that's, you know, so we're not about robots being kind of left alone in the traditional sense, so they kind of get on with their pre-programmed work. We're interested in everything that involves people who are actually required to work with the robots. So that's kind of part of our, I guess, our culture. What we offer you as a potential PhD student here is, you know, of course, you'll work with multidisciplinary and world-leading researchers. Our researchers are world-leading in their various areas. We've got very flexible and supportive work environments here. There are opportunities to travel and industry placements. A little bit more about that in a second. Collaborative working both within and across the programs and the organizations. So even though we have 5 individual programs, they actually, the people in them work together a lot. And you know, and that's again part of what we actually need to do. So some of the projects actually require people from the various programs to work together to get outcomes. We have a training and development program that includes mentoring and practical communications training for you as a new researcher. You know, how do you actually communicate your results other than in the traditional ways, which might be writing a paper or going to a conference, where we understand, of course, you need to communicate your research results in other ways these days as well. So we're going to have training around that. And then there'll be opportunities for you to input into the strategy and operations of the centre and insight into end user interests. So we're running the centre in quite a transparent way, where sort of everybody's welcome to get involved in all aspects of the centre, because part of this centre is training everyone. So the more you get involved, really, the better, and the more you will learn. So it's probably fairly obvious already, but we're based in 3 cities. So UTS is based in Sydney, QUT in Brisbane, and Swinburne in Melbourne. And all 3 cities are very good places to live. They always rate very highly in the world as, you know, attractive places to live. Finally, where I am today in Brisbane, we finally got the Olympics, because of course Melbourne's already had the Olympics, Sydney's already had the Olympics. We've always missed out on the Olympics. We finally got the Olympics. You may not be aware, but in 2032, the Olympics will be here in Brisbane. So we can tick that one off. Okay, the PhD program. So as I've already mentioned, we've got 16 full scholarships. And they kind of run over 3.5 years. It's typical at our universities for PhD students to have 4 weeks of leave a year, which is this kind of Australian standard amount of leave that most people in the workplace have. So that's how that works. There's going to be opportunity to develop research that directly aligns to industry problems. Of course, we're looking for students that are genuinely interested in solving industry problems. And considerable time will be spent with industry via 12-month placements or equivalents. Now, this is a requirement of our funding agency, the ARC, that PhD students spend this 12 months with industry. But that doesn't mean that for 12 months you would be necessarily working in an industry partner's building. That can be made up of, it might be 3 months here, 6 months here, 3 months here. It could be a combination of other ways of doing it. And depending on the work that's being done, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would be physically located for all of that time in the industry partner. It may be more convenient for both yourself and the industry partner that you are remote working, but you're sort of on the clock working with them. So, your kind of day-to-day for those weeks or months will be very focused on working with them, but you may be somewhere else. You may be at your host university, you may be at home, whatever. There's a lot of flexibility that we've all learned we require in COVID times as well. So you're probably all very familiar with that. So yes, we're going to have structured training and development programs, and we will personalize that depending on you, what you already know, the projects you're working on, those sorts of things. And then there'll be practical experience to apply training and development, including a casual employment contract from year 2 to produce communications relating to your project or program. So what this means is that you, on top of the scholarship, you will get some additional money. You'll be employed as a research assistant to do some communications about your research, which the centre can use to promote to the wider industry, which is one of our requirements, that we share research, but we can train you, and you'll be paid during that time as well, additionally. So we think kind of that everybody's a winner in that particular situation. Industry placements, I think I've already talked about this, but they could be with multiple partners in that 12 months we've already talked about. We've got, we can have extreme flexibility here, and things will of course evolve as the centre evolves itself. So things here could change as we go along, right? And we'll work with our industry partners to work out what makes the most sense. The people we're looking for. So, it'd be good to have people that have experience or an interest in carrying out participatory and co-design research. You should have an interest in working with researchers from other disciplines and learning new methodologies. This is critical, right? So you should be kind of passionate about learning outside of your core discipline as well as in your core discipline, because we think that's what's going to make everything work. You should want to embrace different ideas and ways of thinking, and hopefully have a strong academic background. And of course, you'll need to meet the eligibility requirements of the enrolling universities. So the 3 different universities we have here. And we welcome applications from those from diverse backgrounds. This is the application process. So, I guess we're in that first bit here where hopefully you'll see some projects that interest you. You can then submit an expression of interest, which is effectively a form which we capture some information about you. Those will then be reviewed, and we'll try and select people, based on how they align with the programs and the supervisors, and probably people will be in touch, and there might be a few Zoom chats, that sort of thing. We will then actually have to, we will let you know whether we want you to submit a formal application, which would then go to the individual universities for their process. And then hopefully you would get accepted there and you would start, and there would be an induction. So this is the overall process. And that is the link to submit your expression of interest. You can find that on the website, of course, as well. Okay, so has anyone got any quick general questions? And it's fine if you don't, because we're going to now cut across to the programs. I'm just trying to see if I can actually see any hands up. No. Okay. Okay, so who is presenting for program 1? Is that you, Teresa?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, over to you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about the program one, Biomimic Cobots, very briefly. So I'm co-lead of the program one. I'm Teresa Vidal-Calleja from UTS, and Chao Chi-Chen is the co-lead for program one. We have three main projects that are associated with the whole program, and hosted in the different universities. I will go to the individual projects in a second. But as you can see, each project will have a principal supervisor. So the QT project will have Professor Peter Cork. In Swinburne, it will be actually Mats Isaksson. And in UTS, it will be myself. But we will work all together, the whole program, to help the development of the research of all topics. And we have our industry partners, which are Weld Australia and Infrabuild. We can move to the next slide. Thanks. So the first project is about cobot contact tasks through multi-sensor deep learning. So the idea is to we investigate these projects to investigate the theories and methods for machine and process modeling based on the robot control to look for intrinsic safety and space variant processes. And the idea is that we will integrate multiple sensors, and the PhD student will develop skills in perception, in manipulation, and with the particular focus on contact tasks. The second project is on cobots learning digital twins, and then in here we investigate theories on learning tasks by demonstration, right? For obviously getting the skills of the operators, which have a lot of knowledge. So hopefully we can transfer this into the cobots. The third project, it's about giving the cobot manipulation with augmented mobility, and the idea is to give robots much more freedom, allow them to not only work in a single in a single spot, so moving around and collaborate with humans. And there will be many research involved in terms of the situational awareness, the navigation, the all the sensory aspects that have to that it's required to help the robots leave the static world. So I think these are our topics. The second project has been already filled up. So the only project 1 and project 3 are still up. And I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Teresa. Thank you. Okay, program 2 now is Marcus.
Okay, that's us. So okay. I'll be co-presenting with my colleague Jared. Hi, my name is Marcus Rittenbrook. I'm an associate professor at QT, and I'm co-leading program 2 on human-robot interaction. So what we're looking here at human-robot interaction is to look at robots as technologies that people interact with and understand what that interaction might look like. And we think that's a really exciting area of research, specifically because people interact with robots and people interact through robots. So there are lots of work routines that we need to understand and adjust robotic systems to. So we have 3 projects within that.
Oh, sorry.
And that's the next program. What we probably need is the individual. Do we have project slides?
Otherwise, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I'll just leave this one. Yeah.
Okay, then we'll just speak to those. Okay, so I'll start with project 2.1, robotic intention visualization. That project is around understanding how the robot can actually show sort of the next move it's planning. So often sort of in work routines, we need to understand the broader context of how people work together and work with technical systems. And there's a lot of research that looks into predicting what humans are doing, so the robot can know what the human is doing, but there isn't that much research into showing the human what the robot is planning to do. So we're looking into that in the first project. Janet, I might hand over to you for the second one.
The second project is a human robotic interaction prototyping toolkit. And the problem that this project deals with is how do we actually make collaborative robots easier to design? At the moment, robots take a lot of work to fit into an actual workplace. It's a really tough technical challenge. And we think that for designers in the future, we need quick and easy ways of prototyping those robotic interactions. So that's what. The third project, multimodal human-robot collaboration, is based at UTS in Sydney. And the problem there is, how do we find new physical ways of people interacting with robots, telling them what to do? So getting beyond key touchscreens and maybe looking at things like gestures, speech, proxemics, gaze, all of those, what we call multimodal ways of interacting. How can we apply that to robotic interaction?
Okay, I think that's...
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Marcus. Okay, program 3. Glenda, are you speaking for this one?
Yes, unfortunately, Matthias couldn't be here today,
Okay.
who's the other program leader for program 3. And our program is looking at how we incorporate design processes, design methods into making the human and robot relationship a real success in the context of our manufacturers. So project 3.1 looks specifically at human factors. So what are the human requirements, the motivations, but also how does their body, how does their body reach and interact, and how does the human body worker position themselves in relation to the collaborative robot in order to achieve the particular task of our manufacturer? And that project will be supervised by myself at QUT, and the industry partner for that is InfraBuild. The second project will be based at UTS in Sydney, and that will be led by Dr. Matthias Gertler, the other program leader. And that project is looking at the design factors. So thinking about what are all the different design elements that need to be taken into consideration. So that includes the space requirements, the tool requirements, how to position the object in relation to the cobot, and how the human has to be taken into account when looking at all those design factors to make, that manufacturing process successful. The third project is going to be, excuse me, at QUT, and that's with industry partner B&R Enclosures, and I will be the main supervisor, but altogether these projects will be supervising together with other CIs and our postdoc Alan, and you'll meet Alan later, I believe. But project 3.3 is looking specifically at augmented and virtual reality in collaborative robotics. So how do we use, whether it's virtual reality to test and simulate how the human and the robot work together, or augmented reality to see how we can position and locate the actual object in the robot in the physical space. So we'll be looking at how augmented and virtual reality come together to help that human and robot work together for that manufacturing process. Oh, I think we did have other slides, but I already talked about the projects.
Oh no, sorry, Glenda, apologies.
That's my fault.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Sally, I think you're here to
Yeah,
talk about
thanks,
program
John.
4.
Yeah, thanks, John. And it's really exciting to hear about all of the other projects. And then I'm hoping what people are seeing is how these things all link together. Because when it comes to the topic area we have in program 4, I've got to admit, when I first looked at it, when I joined the team, I was like, quality assurance and compliance. I know it'll be important, but it doesn't sound super exciting. But what is really exciting about this area is that it's the thing that underpins for so many industries. How do we actually turn what we're doing in our manufacturing into a product? And how do we make sure as we move forward that we're actually understanding the steps that both the people and the robots are doing and how the information comes together around those? So we've got a range of projects that we're running in collaboration with UTS and Swinburne University that really, if you're interested in data science, if you're interested in pulling out how the information it might flow through these systems. And one thing here, our lead industry partners aren't actually fully established for this program. So we can see through the projects that are happening with Cook Medical, we can see through other projects. And when you start to think about things like space and other industries that actually get involved in robots and people working together, the types of work that we'll be doing in this quality assurance and compliance domain are really important and bring together a really varied group of skills. So we are looking for students who want to look at areas between. So it might be that you've got business skills, it might be that you've got data science skills, it might be that you've got robotic skills, might have design skills. We'd be really interested in exploring with you how we could tailor a project in this theme that would really suit you as well. So I want to say that from the outset. So we have 4 projects. We've filled one. Idant is here today actually with us, and he's going to do project 4.2, which is around digital twins for optimizing how robots and people work together and how we can actually develop those scenarios of predicting how they might work together. And you will have already seen from some of the other programs that there's natural links there to the activities that people are doing in other projects. In our project 1, what we're looking at is the development of those specifications for how automated systems will work together, where the people come in and participate in things, give guidance. But how does that actually, how do we actually design that from scratch? How do we think about what that system flow looks like? So if you're interested in those types of areas, that's really exciting. That's going to be supervised by Michelle, by the very fabulous Michelle Dunn and a colleague of ours, Chris McCarthy. Then at UTS with Mickey Clemens, we're looking at the monitoring and automated documentation outcomes that come from these things. So how does the information get through to the systems? How do we bring all the different information streams together? And how do we actually then use those types of systems to perhaps backtrack at the end? So if something fails, how do we work out what was the problem in the system? How do we do automatic improvement systems? How do we guide somebody to actually say, actually, that hasn't quite gone right. Let's go back, rework it in the process flow, bring up those right things. And then the other project at UT that'll be based in Sydney at UTS with Mickey is the data analytics and that process validation. So if you've got robots and humans working together in, say, the medtech sector, which is an area I come from, we have a validation process that we have to go through. So we have to know that the robot actually did what it said, and we have to know what the human did what it said it was going to do, and that it followed the rules. So how do we actually automate those systems? How do we validate and check? The industries that want to know that they can use these systems often work in areas like aerospace. You don't want the wings falling off your plane. You need to be able to know that the robot that did some of that construction and the human that came together to work with it did all the things they said they were going to do, and that all the testing was done. And so it really does become another one of those data situations, but it's a very interesting area to think about how all of these different things come together. So I hope for those of you who are looking at it going, quality assurance and compliance sounds really boring, it's essential, but I think it's also going to be a really exciting place to look at the variation and the design and people also really importantly in this mix as well. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Sally. Okay, program 5. I see Greg's online. So Greg, are you talking to this one?
I am talking on this one, John.
Okay.
So yeah, hi everybody. So if we have all these technology advancements, how do the workers feel about this? And how is it going to change their work and their jobs? And other companies that learn about what we're doing, will they adopt the technologies that we're creating? So program 5 is really about the human robot workforce. And here we're looking for students who have a background in human resources, in industrial relations, the future of work, change management, and the adoption of technology with our team that you can see there, as well as our colleague Sean Gallagher from Swinburne. So project one takes a very broad look, not at the particular companies that we're working with, but the whole industry of manufacturing. And we'll be doing some more research there about the skills that are required and the security of the jobs of people who are going to be affected by this step change in technology. With project two that I am leading, we're specifically looking at the jobs rather than the workforce. So how will the job design actually change in future? How will the particular elements of all of the jobs that we know are in manufacturing, for example, trade work, pattern makers, boiler makers, how are those specific jobs going to be changed? And what skills development is required for those workers going forward? Project three is really looking at, is a particular workforce in a particular company ready for this? And how do the managers who are responsible for bringing in these changes understand them? Many companies have never even worked with a robot, let alone this new direction of working with cobots that are safe and integrated into many spaces and jobs and teams in particular companies. Will managers be able to handle that? And what skills do managers need to get ready for this and to make the changes? And finally, a big problem in manufacturing is diversity, bringing in people from different backgrounds, bringing in more women into the workforce, and also dealing with the issue of aging workforce and how that can change if you have cobots who are doing dangerous and physically demanding work. And so that is program 5. We've got one more slide, John.
Okay, going to that now. There we go.
So these are some of the issues and challenges that we see that we will be addressing in this particular program, and thinking about our stakeholders and working with them as we not only seek to do the research, but to make our research have an impact with our stakeholders, who will be employers, workers, but also industry bodies, government agencies. We've already done our first project with Jobs Queensland, who looks after all of the training and education issues for the Queensland sector and manufacturing, but industry bodies, the employer companies such as Australian Industry, and worker groups and unions. And if we think about what their needs are, and we've already started to talk to those bodies, often the main presenting pain points are labour shortages, skill and capability shortages, developing the digitally capable workforce of the future, the skills that they need in digital, and also, as I mentioned before, workforce diversity and longevity. It's an exciting team. We've already started work. We've got a great postdoc in Melinda on board, so we're looking forward to hearing from you if you're interested in this program.
Thanks so much, Greg. We also have an open innovation network. Now, who is talking to that? Is that you, Dan? Okay, go for it.
Yes, it is, John. Thank you. Yeah, my name's Dan. I am looking after the Open Innovation Network as a postdoc. I did my PhD at QUT, looking at innovation and innovation management and networks. But shortly after doing that, I actually founded a augmented mobility startup. So the other half of me is also, I guess, a tech entrepreneur. So the problem that we're really looking at is how open innovation opens up organizational boundaries. So particularly in the startup world, it's very obsessed about software, and that's because hardware is hard. And as John's already mentioned, it's particularly hard with cobotics, right? So for a company to have access to university research and development is incredibly important, but not without its problems. So we're really looking about how those collaborative practices can be amplified and across the network of partners. So if you think of each partner as a node, what we're trying to do is really look at that as an area of research, and then figure out how we share that back, not only through research, but also to wider industry. So open work from the design robotics team, which preceded the centre. So we've got team members, many of them are here today, that are embedded across all of the 5 programs. So again, we're trying to, if you can very clearly see the boundaries of the organisation here, and how external partners can be brought in with things like 3D scanning and VR software. But then in the case of at the bottom, other research institutions really come in. So we're actually here to support you as PhD researchers, and how you get your research shared, not only through academia, but also we help facilitate how you communicate and share your research. So we're here to help you.
Thanks so much, Dan. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. So let me stop the sharing there. And I can facilitate some Q&A. So from our people that are dialed in that are not part of the centre, do you have any immediate questions? Noting that we've got a few of the postdocs here as well, and they're the people that have more recently completed a PhD. So you probably believe them more than you'd believe old people like me if you ask any questions about what it's like to do a PhD. So first of all, have we got any questions? Feel free to either and I think the answer is yes. I don't know, Sally, have you got any comment on that? It's probably a program 4 area, probably, but it's one of those things that goes across everything. So
I think you're right. And in terms of, it's also that the trust piece, I think, probably comes into the workforce side of things with Greg,
yes. Yeah.
Probably more than anywhere else, in that's the point at which people make choices about what they're going to do. But I do think as John said, it underpins a hell of a lot, because nobody's going to invest in the robots themselves if they don't trust that they can actually do the work or interface with their workforce, or if there's a safety risk associated with it as well. Greg's probably got far more insight into this than I do.
Yeah, so actually I'm supervising a PhD around trust, and specifically trust in AI at the moment, not as part of this centre, but sort of parallel to that. So trust is definitely, it's an area where there's been a lot of research. So do workers, do suppliers, do supply chain partners trust a particular technology in terms of its ability to deliver consistently, and in terms of the impact that it will have on their workforce. So I would say, particularly when we're talking with managers about how they are going to understand the impact of the cobots on their operation, and their operation always has to consider who their upstream and downstream partners are, then they are going to want to know that the robots are not only reliable and safe, but also that they can be quality assured in terms of the inputs and outputs that they need from their supply chain. So trust is one of those variables that I think is very important to the workforce program, and other elements of this going forward, Adele.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you both for answers. So if you need any support in terms of supervising those students or help in identifying or evaluating candidates, please let me know.
Okay, thanks, Adela.
Now I'm going to throw a question to, I think, Al. I'm going to throw this to you, Al. I think you are the postdoc here that has submitted your PhD the last, right? So you're the freshest. You're the freshest person.
The freshest. Yeah.
So can you tell us what was great about doing a PhD?
Freedom. There's a fair amount of freedom, which can be a problem as well. You need some limitations, but freedom to actually research and have a genuine curiosity into any topic that you want, and being able to research that to a very small infinitesimal level kind of makes you feel really good, actually. And it makes you feel like you're a little bit of an expert, which is what you should be when you finish a PhD. So I think it's the curiosity for me was what drove me into going and doing a PhD as a general interest. But at the end of it, it's interesting that it's given me plenty of options, many options later on when you finish it.
Thanks, Al. Now, can I ask you, who's also one of our postdocs here, what made you do a PhD in the first place? Why did you decide to do a PhD?
I think similar to Al's. I think just the curiosity towards design, particularly my PhD was about design research and interaction design. So I found it fascinating to be able to develop ways to understand people in the ways that we create design that works for people and is very people-centric, is very much about understanding, is very much about empathy. And I think that that's something that I was really passionate about, because I see design and design research become something that can bring impact to the world, and it's not necessarily just create things that's beautiful, it's useful, but it's also can influence how people live. So I think that's what kind of hooked me into doing research, and then kind of find out more about like what can I do as a designer. And I guess like for people with different background, potentially stepping into the Cobotics Centre, you might be exposed to some of those more user-centric approach, and might open up your view to what design and engineering can do as well.
Thanks, you. Now I'm going to ask Fred, who's also one of our postdocs, what was the biggest challenges in doing your PhD? People, hear how, maybe how tough it is, but what did you find the challenges were?
Yeah, I think probably just the amount of time that the PhD takes. So you're going to be dedicating a chunk of your life to it. But I think that's also a good opportunity to work on something that you're really passionate about, and dedicated a chunk of time. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I think, in a way. It's the opportunity you probably won't get anywhere else other than doing a PhD. So I think if you're really passionate about something, then it's a good way to dedicate your time to something for that amount of time. Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. Now I think we've got time for one quick final question. I'm going to throw this to Melinda. Can you comment on the beauty of doing a PhD and helping you get potential industry jobs?
Oh, sure, Jonathan. So I came from a public service background. I'd worked there for about 10 years, so I was really keen to do some research that had practical application. It was difficult as doing a PhD, not as part of a research centre, to make those industry connections. So I think anyone who does one with the Cobotics Centre is already off to a flying start, because they will be embedded in industry. They'll have exposure to many disciplines and many different industry partners. And it also really gives you a chance to think about the problems that are important to the industry that you might end up working in or with after you're finished your PhD, not only thinking about the research implications and how you can produce great journal articles that contribute to the body of knowledge, but also having that dual focus on knowing that you're going to make a difference to government policy or to practices in an organisation or to technology that will actually make your research outcomes have a practical focus too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Melinda. Okay, I think we have run out of time, so I am going to call it a day there. So thank you for everybody that contributed, and thanks for everybody that dialed in. We'll make a recording of this, and then we can take questions offline. So hopefully we'll get lots in the next few days and weeks. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. See you.